Hello friends, welcome back. So in this tutorial we are going to discuss checked versus unchecked exception in Java. What is the difference between checked and unchecked exception? So this is one of the most important questions or comes from the exceptions concept, and this is one of the widely asked questions in the interview. So suppose you are going you have been giving the interview, and if you are attending the 10 interview, so out of 10 the chance is out of 10 8 times you will be facing these questions. And this is the very frequently asked, like what is the difference between checked and unchecked exception. And many people, around 90% people have a misconceptions about this checked and unchecked exception. Okay, so before going ahead, let me give you one analogy to understand what is the checked and the unchecked exception. Okay, so let me give you one analogy. So let's say I'm creating one class test, and here I am creating a, let's say, public static void main string array args. Okay, and here I am creating print writer, right? Print writer, let's say pw is equal to new print writer, and here let's say I'm giving the path where I have where I have put the file. Let's say C drive, let's say java.txt, right? And thereafter I am printing pw.println, and here I am putting Java ashram, right? This is the one thing I did. And thereafter another thing also I am doing, system.out.println 10 divided by 0. So the use case is, I am creating just one class, and in that class I am using the print writer to write something, this Java ashram, to this file java.txt file. Okay, so what is going to happen with this line? Okay, so if you compile this program, okay, it will throw an exception, okay, in the line number, line number 5. So what the exception will come over here? The exception will come like unreported exception, okay, java.io dot file not found exception, right? And it will come must be caught or throw, like this will come like this. Okay, so this exception will thrown from here. So compiler itself will throw this exception. So even though you have a file java.txt, okay, in a C drive, but still compiler will throw an exception. So compiler will ask us, okay, it's fine if you have a java.txt in a C drive, but what if this file does not exist at a runtime? So you must handle this. Okay, it's a chance, right? It may happen like while compiling the file, while creating a class file, the file is over there, but what about the runtime? It may happen the runtime your file will not be available, so you must caught the exception. Okay, else I will not compile. So compiler will deny this compilation, and it will throw an exception. So it basically checked at the compile time itself. So the exception which are get checked at a compile time, okay, to smooth execution of program at runtime is called checked exception, right? So let's second example, system.out.println. Will we get any exception? 10 divided by 0? No, we will not get a exception in a compile time, but at runtime while executing the program we will accept the arithmetic exceptions at runtime. So why we could not get this exception at compile time? Why it's runtime? Okay, because the compiler is not checking over here. Okay, so the exception which are checked by the compiler at compile time to smooth execution of program at runtime is called checked exception, and any exception which are not checked by the compiler is called unchecked exception. We'll see. So this was the one of the analogy, and the very misconceptions among the developer is, the checked exceptions occurs at compile time and the unchecked exceptions occurs at runtime. There is no concepts like this in Java. There used to be concepts in C++, but this kind of concepts is not in Java. So every exception either is a checked exception or unchecked exception, it will occur at runtime only. There are no chance of occurring any exception at compile time. Compiler is checking the exceptions at compile time so that the exception should not occur at runtime. Okay, so it does not mean the exceptions are occurring at compile time, right? The exception will occur only at the runtime, but just compiler is checking the exception. How will you handle? Okay, that's fine if the java.txt file is there in the C drive, but what if the file does not exist there? So frequently kind of exception which comes frequently, okay, that kind of exceptions compiler suggest us and it will not allow to go ahead. Okay, if you see the exception which compiler throws, it checks unreported exception must be got. So it's not saying it generated by occur at the compile time, it's saying this has been unreported exception. You must report, you must handle this exception by using the try and catch block or the throw keyword, right? So this was the one of the analogy. Let's come back. So checked exceptions are checked by compiler for the smooth execution of the program at runtime. Okay, it means if a method is throwing a checked exception, then it should handle the exception using try catch block, or it should declare the exception using throws keyword, right? And if you are not adhered to the above rule, this rule, okay, we will get a compilation error, right? So how will you handle this exception over here? Either you need to put in a try block, try, let's say try, okay, and then catch, and here it will be a file not found exception, and thereafter you can handle something over here, right? Or how will you handle this exception? Okay, you need to also put in a try catch block, right? Try and catch, and this is a arithmetic exception. Okay, and E. And if you don't want to use the try catch, you need to throw the exception over here. Throw like you can put over here file not found exception, comma, this arithmetic exception. Okay, and this will be handled over here. So this is how we are handling the checked and unchecked. But let's go ahead and deep dive more into this. Okay, so what about the unchecked exception? So checked exception are checked by compiler for the execution for the smooth execution of the program at runtime. Okay, and if you are not handling the checked exception, okay, by using the try catch block or throws keyword, okay, we will get a compile time error. Okay, but it just suggesting to handle that exception. Without this it will not move ahead, right? So now unchecked exception which are not checked by compiler are called unchecked exception. Simply it means if your program is throwing an unchecked exception, and even if you did not handle or declare that exception, the program won't give a compilation error. It will not give a compilation error. Okay, it does not mean if the compilation error is not coming, you should not handle. Instead, you should more focus on that to handle, because at runtime, in the production environment or any other environment, it will be very difficult to trace. So, unchecked exception you must handle more carefully. And all unchecked exceptions are direct subclass of runtime exception. We will show you in a hierarchy what are all checked exception and what are all unchecked exception. You can clearly bifurcate. Okay, so let me show you one more analogy over here. So let's see, you are creating one class test number, and here you are just putting 10 divided by 0, right? So in this program compiler will not give you any compilation error. So this is a unchecked exception. Compiler is not checking, right? So you must handle this. How you can handle? Either using the try catch or you can using throws keyword, right? Throws arithmetic exception. Okay, then you will not get any compilation error. Okay, or you can handle using the try catch block, right? Another example you can take, like suppose in a program you are declaring an array with 5th element, right? Array has only 5th element, but if you are trying to display the value of 6th element, it should throw, right? So array index 7 means the 6th element you are trying, so it will give you the array index out of bound exception. So compilation time this will not give you any error, okay, but at runtime it will throw you an error, right? So you need to handle this. Okay, you need to more carefully handle this, because compilation will not giving you any suggestion, any hint, okay, and not asking you to handle. So you have a more chance and more risky code, okay, is going to deploy in a production environment. So you must handle this, right? So how you can handle this? You can try either the throws keyword, or I can use the try keyword over here. Try and catch, and here you can give array index or an exception, right? And this will go smoothly. And if you are trying to access the 6th element beyond the 5th, okay, it will handled by program. So either it's catch exception or the uncatched exception, both are generally comes because of the developer incompetent handle the code or writing the code, or developer has missed something, okay, while writing the code. So it's all a mistake of developer, and because of that the this exception are coming, right? So let me give you, but you can ask the questions like what is the benefit of the checked exception. So benefit is like checked exception is that are the exception that are mostly common that comes. Okay, let me give you one analogy, real life example. Everyone, we have given the exam of board, 10th class board exam, right? So while going to the exam, our mother always asks like did you keep your hall ticket to enter into the examination hall? Did you keep a second pen in case the pen is not working? So this kind of the exception can come at the examination hall at runtime. Okay, it does not mean you will face that, but it may come, right? So these are the checked exception. You are checking because at runtime you want to smoothly progress, right? So like in a runtime, pen not found exception can come at a runtime, um your hall ticket not found exception can come. So to avoid this, your mother is checking from the home itself, okay, to make sure at a runtime you should not face any problem, right? So that is the the check exception. Unchecked exception, here you can give the example like in an examination hall, behind your candidate, okay, any bomb blast can come, right? So bomb blast can happen, but how many times? It cannot be say like this cannot happen. It may happen, but how many times it can happen? This is a very rare chance, right? So we are not going to check that kind of exception. So that are unchecked exceptions, okay. So let me come back and show you the another analogy. Like suppose this is the hierarchy of our all exception. So object is the main class of all Java class. So throwable is the child of object. So again, error and exception are the child of throwable class. Throwable is the class, not an interface. This is also sometimes asked by the interviewer, okay. So error and exception. So another exception have a two child class, runtime exception and IO exception. And runtime exception has a illegal argument exception, index out of bound exception, array index out of bound exception, and arithmetic exception, and number format exception, right? And IO exception have file not found and socket exception. And error is something like it's a system related error, like out of memory error. You have a memory of 5 MB or 5 GB RAM, you have a memory of 40 GB hard disk. If it goes out of memory, then your program can terminate, right? Linkage error, like, or a stack overflow error. But programmer is not responsible for this kind of error. So either system admin, okay, is responsible, who is handling, who is configuring the system, he is responsible, okay. But that exception can come, that error can come, right? But in the exception class, runtime and IO exception, so IO exception like file not found exception that we saw, that compilers check before itself, right? File may not available, or socket exception. So in this diagram, so if you see the error, under the error, it's not a programmer responsibility, right? So it cannot be checked by the programmer. So this is the unchecked exception, right? So all hierarchy, out of memory exception, stack overflow error, linkage error, this is the unchecked exception. You cannot check this, right? And if you see the runtime exception, so all the subclass of the runtime exception are unchecked exception, right? So index out of bound exception, array index bound exception, these are not checked by the compiler. So error class and the runtime exception class are comes under the unchecked, and apart from this, whichever or the class are comes under the checked exception, like IO exception, file not found exception, socket exception, or are under the checked exception. So you can remember this, error and runtime exceptions are the unchecked exceptions, and this vertical, this right hand side, sorry, are IO exception, file not found exception, socket exception are the checked exceptions. So one we should must understand, and you need a clarity, we should have a clarity basically, like whether the exceptions is checked or unchecked exception, it will occur at runtime. There are no chance of occurring any exception at compile time. In Java, no any exceptions occurs at compile time. The exceptions are checked by the compiler at compile time. There is a difference between these two things that we need to understand. If you see the exception, it clearly mentions uncaught exceptions. Okay, this is not occurring at the compile time. It's it's asking compiler to handle that so that it should not occur at runtime. Okay, so either it's the exception is a checked exception or unchecked exception, it will occur at runtime only. So that was all about the checked and unchecked exceptions. Okay, please feel free to comment. If you have not liked, please feel free to give the suggestion in the comment box. We will try to improve if you are not liked, and if you like, please motivate us while giving the comment section. Okay, so thanks all for watching this tutorial. Please like and subscribe so that you not missed any such tutorial. Thank you.